Ah, Hollywood. The name still carries a ring of magic everywhere in the world. All the glitter, the glamour, and excitement. This is the place where movies are made. But there's more to Hollywood than all the major studios and their big budget hits. There's a whole other world of movie making that you won't read about in People magazine or see on Entertainment Tonight. The exciting world of independent film productions. Hi, I'm Brink Stevens, and as an actress, I'm a part of that world. Let me now take you on a fun, different kind of studio tour. We'll go behind the scenes of independent movie making and meet some of the unusual creative people who make it all happen. Charles Band is the brilliant producer-director who founded Empire and Full Moon Companies. He's given us such classics as Reanimator, Ghoulies, Parasite, Metal Storm, and Laser Blast. Head of American Independent Productions, Fred Olen Ray is one of Hollywood's busiest producer-directors. His films include Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, The Tomb, Warlords, Phantom Empire, and Spirits. One of Hollywood's most talented and outspoken young filmmakers, Jeff Burr, has directed The Offspring, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and Stepfather 2. The gifted co-writer of Evil Dead 2, Scott Spiegel, is the writer and director of Intruder. His most recent script is The Rookie for Clint Eastwood and Warner Brothers. David DeCoteau is an incredibly prolific director, producer, and distributor. He's given us films like Creepazoids, Sorority Babes, and the Slimeball Bolorama, Assault of the Killer Bimbos, and Puppet Master 2. C. Courtney Joyner has written numerous horror screenplays like Prison, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Class of 1999, Shapeshifter, and The Offspring. Ernest D. Farino went from animating the Pillsbury Doughboy to title design and special effects on The Terminator. He's recently directed 3 episodes of the TV show Monsters, as well as Steel and Lace. Daniel M. Peterson is a hard-working new talent in Hollywood. He's written, directed, and co-produced 2 delightful horror films, Girlfriend from Hell and Vampire Nights. The editor of Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Chris Roth, has been an integral part of Fred Olen Ray's team. He's also edited such movies as The Haunting Fear, Spirits, and Mob Boss. An industrious young filmmaker from Ohio, J.R. Bookwalter has made his mark as the writer and director of The Dead Next Door and Robot Ninja. He's also produced Skinned Alive and Ghoul School. Mark McGee has written movie scripts like Equinox and Bad Girls from Mars. His scholarly books include Fast and Furious, The Best of the Cheap Acts, and Little Shop of Horrors book.
I did all kinds of stuff. I was a taxidermist for a while. I was a grocery bag boy. And I used to bag groceries until I saved up $111 to get a Super 8 movie kit from Sears. And after I reached that point and bought the camera, I quit my job and decided, I would be a filmmaker from that moment on.
So I started off similar in respect to a lot of other people, a lot of people in the industry, directors and so on and so forth, by making my own Super 8 home movies years and years ago. In fact, I started in the 60s before there was even was Super 8. It was regular 8.
My interest in special effects and this kind of filmmaking took its first form because I was a fan of Ray Harryhausen.
When I first moved down here to Los Angeles, I was 18 years old, and I said, look, I'm from Portland, Oregon originally. And I said, well, I've got a color project for him. I've got to work for this guy. And he was gearing up to do a picture called Galaxy of Terror. And I think it was Christmas of 1980. And he hired me as a PA.
In 1978, at the age of 11, with my mother's Super 8 movie camera in my backyard.
I've been in this business, I guess, most of my life. My father is still actively making movies, but as a kid, I grew up on a movie set. He was making spaghetti westerns and sword and sandal epics with Steve Reeves in Italy.
First, I tried to be an animator and discovered very quickly that I hadn't the talent for that, so I started writing, my own little scripts. And as soon as I realized I could actually write one that was feature length, I thought I had really accomplished something. Forget the quality of it.
I've directed short films in the past, and I don't know, I was directing, writing, producing, acting. I was kind of doing the whole ball of wax. But when it came time to actually direct a film, I think I was fairly prepared, more so than I knew at the time.
I had my mother co-sign a loan using my motorcycle as collateral, and I took a loan out of a bank and I used that money to get going on the first picture.
I was going through some back issues of Fangoria and came upon an article on the movie The Evil Dead, which I greatly admired. That was a great film. And it got me thinking that, the guy who wrote and directed it, Sam Raimi, was from Detroit, and I was from Akron, Ohio, so I figured, well, that's only 4 hours away. I'll try and give him a call. So I tracked him down on his number, left a couple of messages, and finally I got a hold of him. My first intention was to go into it as a PA for Evil Dead 2, which they were just starting up. This was like early on. And that led to, I went up and showed Sam some of my short films, which he liked a lot apparently. And I was ready to just, be a PA and make some industrial films or whatever and just kind of slowly lead into the whole feature film thing. But he kept prodding me, do it, go out and make a feature film. So I was like, okay. So I'm driving back from Detroit and I started to get the whole idea for Dead Next Door.
The first film I did, feature film, I was driving a cab, and I was doing, after film school, I did the literally, writing thing where you write during the day and you drive a cab at night and you meet a bunch of weird people. And I picked up this guy in my cab, and we were talking, and he said, "Are you an actor?" Because, all actors drive cabs. And I said, "No, I'm a filmmaker." And he was in construction. He wanted to be a producer, but all of his friends were producers, but all of his friends produced these multi-million-dollar films. Well, I went to him, because we kept in contact. I said, "Look, if you can pay for a camera and for film and food for the cast and crew, you can be a producer and you can have your name up in lights." And so he gave me $7,500.
I approached Charles Band in 1986 or 86, I think it was, and said, "Look, I've got half the money to make a $60,000 picture. Are you in or are you not in?" And he liked the script, and he liked the whole concept. I was 24 years old at the time, and he liked the energy. He liked the commitment, and he knew it was going to be a first picture, and he thought he'd take a chance. So what happened was I said, "Look, I need an extra $30,000 to finish the picture. I have enough to shoot it, but I need another $30 to do the post-production, all the editing and sound mixing and music and all that." And so what happened was he said, "Okay, let's do it." That was a Thursday. The meeting was about 20 minutes. And the following Monday, I was burning film through a camera, and we shot Dream Maniac.
What I decided to do, my brother moved out here. I'm from Georgia, and he moved out to LA with me, and we decided we're not going to wait for anybody, we'll just make a movie ourselves. We were incredibly naive, incredibly stupid, and maybe that's why we ended up making the movie. But anyway, we went back to my hometown, Dalton, Georgia, home of Debbie Norville and Marla Maples, and we just raised the money independently. We formed a limited partnership because we'd been inspired by guys like Sam Raimi, who had done it on Evil Dead, and Night of the Living Dead was done basically the same way. And we just raised money and made the movie.
Evil Dead 2 did pretty well, certainly wonderfully critically, and I was approached by this producer, Lawrence Bender. He asked me if I had any horror ideas, and I said, "Yeah, I do." And he says, "Well, could you be into directing this horror idea?" And I said, "Yeah." And I told him this story about Night Crew, kids in a supermarket, wholesale slaughter routine. And we went with a company, Vista Street Productions, that wanted to finance it. Extremely low budget, like a 10-day shoot, and $45,000 kind of a movie. And we were into pre-production. We got the money for that or whatever, but Vista Street was waiting on this big check. And it was tough for us because the whole location of Night Crew was a supermarket, and we had that booked for March, and that was the only time we could use it. So realizing that was like, if we didn't have the store, we didn't have a movie, Lawrence went to Charlie Band and pitched this project.
My first movie, The Offspring, was made by my college roommate, Jeff Burr, and I got together, and Jeff wanted to direct a movie. I wanted to write one, and we teamed with his brother and another roommate of ours, and they raised the money, and we wrote the script and made the movie for about $250,000.
Well, you know what? I think I learned very early on. My first feature cost $298 to produce. I think the real key to this is to don't spend years trying to find a couple $100,000. You can start a feature. You may never finish it, but you can actually start a feature for any amount of money that you can scrape up.
Our picture was made for $5,000. And because everybody worked for free, I mean, it was everybody was young hopefuls, and you know, they just wanted to work, they just wanted to do something. So I think the only thing that cost us anything was materials and the film.
The first one, Vampire Nights, I had to do it low budget, and at the time, genre films were very popular, and then they're popular now. So I was thinking, well, what's inexpensive to do? Well, a zombie movie is expensive because you got makeup. We had no money for makeup. What is another genre? Frankenstein, again, costs a lot of money. A werewolf, prosthetics, time, money. What's cheap? Vampires. All you need is 2 little fangs, and you're basically a vampire. So it came out of necessity.
It just so happened at the time, video went through the roof. Anything you could make could be distributed. Things have changed since then, but at the time, it was a very lucrative market to take advantage of. So we made another picture, a thing called Creepazoids. We shot it in 35 millimeter instead of 16 millimeter. And they released it theatrically. And with 10 prints, they bicycled around the country. And basically what happened was the film got a lot of publicity. Linnea Quigley was the star. Had a lot of monsters in it. And it worked. It played theatrically. It got mixed reviews. And I went on video, and it moved 14,000 pieces.
Years ago, when video didn't exist, the only outlet for these movies was the drive-in. And all of our films would have played the drive-ins and the theaters if there was no video market. I think the thing to remember is that the guys who went out to the drive-ins back then lost their money. That's why there's so many features that were only directed, you know, a guy directs one movie, he loses all his money and he never makes another film. And that's why there's so many people who are one-shot filmmakers. And thanks to video, we're actually able to make $1 now and make a living doing something that used to just gut people that tried to get into the business. It's not really a rut that we're in. We're carving a niche in an entirely new kind of media, and we're doing it very successfully, I might add. You know, where other people would maybe step out with one film and then get bitten up alive by NMD or somebody like that in the distribution. And now we're able, I mean, come on, just the fact that we've done 20 features in less than 8 years should tell you something. We're doing something that's successful, and it's not a rut. Everybody should be in this kind of rut. Everybody who feels sorry for me should be in my position. You know, we're actually able to make $1. Please, somebody rescue me from this. I can't take it anymore. I want to lose my shirt.
Well, Empire got started really in a lot of ways for the same reasons I started Full Moon. Empire has nothing to do with Full Moon and vice versa. Empire was a company that I've founded in the early 80s, 83, 84. I had recently sold a video company that I started called Media Home Entertainment. And this was all in between making movies, of course. But the idea for Empire was to have a little more control on my own product, to be able to sell my own pictures directly to the foreign marketplace and enter into long-term deals with distributors and clients, as opposed to going through a sales agent who effectively takes your picture to Cannes or Milan and writes a sale and charges you a lot for doing that.
So many of us have tried to go independent, which is one reason why sometimes we're accused of making terrible movies, because to go independent, sometimes you have to deal with budgets and time schedules and stuff that aren't conducive to good filmmaking, but you do them anyway because that's what you have to do to gain your freedom from the people who are ripping you off or would like to rip you off. We have had numerous problems in the past with distributors who have failed to pay us, and we've had to go to court. And court's a very long and involved process. I spent as much on a lawsuit last year. I could have shot a feature for what I spent to go to court.
My first film, I mean, complete auteur in the respect of I had no one to answer to but the budget. And the film ended up costing about $450,000, but we had about $270,000 to actually make the movie. And that I had no one to answer to. My brother and another partner of mine was producing, so I didn't have any studio executives or anything. You know, you had my brother, and a guy I went to school with, but they would leave me alone creatively, and it was great. I didn't even realize how it was the only way I knew to work, because it's how it always worked.
Generally, most of the producers will tell you the same thing. Go for it. Conceptualize anything you want. And when you're writing a horror movie and you want to do something that's fantastic with monsters or ghosts or houses blowing up or what have you, they'll generally say, just go, just write it, etc. what then happens on a lower budgeted film is that the arithmetic eventually determines what is finally left in the screenplay, where you really have to pare things down according to, cost restrictions, etc. Bigger budgeted movies, the same thing happens, but it's not, you don't tend to lose the big chunks, etc. Before it was a crowd of people in the middle of the street, and the street opens up and they all fall into the abyss and they're all on fire. Well, sorry, we're not going to do that. We're going to shoot it in Phil's apartment, and it's going to be one guy, and he drops a match in his pants.
And Clint Eastwood is extremely cool, and he is Clint Eastwood. He's an icon. So you're kind of like, whatever. But I mean, when I had story meetings with Clint, I don't know, he makes you feel incredibly at ease, and all of a sudden you find yourself at one point in the conversation discussing these things with him, going, whether it's Clint Eastwood or, John Keel or J.R. Bookwalter, basically we're talking the same language. And it doesn't really matter. It is just a question of money and star status, being a celebrity. That makes you view things a little differently, but we're all after the same thing. We're all trying to make the picture the best we can under the circumstances.
Sure, I think everybody would like to have a big budget film because they have big budget paychecks, and you're just trying to buy respectability like Canon used to do. Of course, they didn't do it very successfully, but it gets to the point where maybe sometimes you do get tired of being the guy that made Hollywood chainsaw hookers or scalps or something like that. You would like something that has a wider exposure.
My third movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, was purely an exercise in corporate filmmaking. It was the biggest budget I'd ever worked with. It was about $3 million, a little under. And so it was a lot of money, but it was like, I came on at a very late stage in the film. In pre-production, I had 2 weeks of pre-production, and which is, ridiculous. And so it was. I had much less. The higher the budgets, it seems, the much less control. So that's why on my next movie, I just want to go back to. I'm the kind of guy I would much rather make a film, a $200,000 movie that I had complete control over, than a $20 million movie where Joel Silver is manipulating the strings.
The 70s, there weren't films like Batman and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Star Wars. I think Star Wars was actually the first film that started this sort of like taking a serial or a high concept idea and turning it into a multi-million-dollar picture. And because of that, these majors are sort of treading in my territory. This is my area, leave me alone. Stop making Batman for $50 million, stop making Howard the Duck for $50 million. I want to make those kind of pictures, but I want to make them for $500,000, $1 million.
I must say I was surprised with New Line. I think they're an incredibly well-managed company. They are amazing at what they've done with the Nightmare series, for example, not artistically, but certainly in a commercial sense. What I found from the top people at New Line, not the people that I was initially dealing with, but from the top people at New Line, they have utter contempt for the genre. They're almost embarrassed that horror films were the reason that the company is in fact a corporation.
A lot of series films, generally the writers come in packs. Because I've worked on other sequels and done polishes on films that were part of series. And it's normally there have been like 20 people there before me and 20 people there afterwards. So that immediately points to there's a basic problem here for most writers who are going to work in this way, is that you are limited. There is a preconception of what a series character, say a Freddy Krueger or Leatherface or Jason Voorhees or whatever, is going to do. And the situations that they find themselves in have to be very specific and generally have to be duplicates of situations that have existed in all the films that have come before.
With New Line, it was a case they wanted to create another Freddy Krueger. With Leatherface, which pretty it's a real tough thing to do, because it's you don't even have the expression of Frankenstein. I mean this guy's wearing a mask and there's only certain things the guy can do. So to try and create a franchise character on Leatherface, it's difficult. So there was a lot riding on the film, and they were so cautious. And one thing you cannot be in horror films is cautious. You have to be, if you're going to make a horror film, you have to say, yeah, let's do it, let's go all out, and you can't hold back.
After Halloween and all the Halloween clones came out and all the slasher movies were all over the place, we go to the World Theater or whatever and see them. The idea that, again, women always as victims, women always, getting a knife in the chest and what have you, was driving me kind of crazy for a while. It's like, I want to see a guy buy it.
Yeah, I think I'm one of the very few filmmakers who actually has primarily women as the aggressors in the films. My films, very rarely are there female victims. Very rarely. I mean, there are more usually male victims in my films than female victims, and I don't know if that's intended or if it just seems to work for me a little better than that. I don't know. I just think seeing a woman diced and sliced on film is just sort of passé and sort of old news and sort of a cop-out.
I don't like violence toward women in particular. I don't mind, women abusing men because I think people kind of like to see that, women sawing men up with chainsaws or beating them with tire irons, as long as they don't sexually molest the men after they've beaten them up, I think it's okay.
I've always felt, that's a good question about, whether or not, well, at least whether I feel a certain social responsibility in terms of what these pictures are about and what the message is. And it's, again, a question of taste. I've never really sat and, made a list of things I would do and I wouldn't do. But none of the films have gone really too far. I've never made a slasher movie, which I think in general, there was a period of time where you could make some quick dollars, right after the Halloween movies and the rip-off Halloween movies were being made and were being were very successful. Friday the 13th. It's ironic, people refer to Halloween as like the beginning of the slasher films, and Halloween was not a slasher movie at all. There's very little blood in it. It's just great filmmaking. And someone looks at it, you'd be surprised. Just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, people think it's the most goriest movie ever made until they look at it and they study it, and you find that there is very little blood in that picture. It's just great filmmaking. There's a lot of tension, there's a lot of tricks, but there's very little blood. It's a lot easier to go out and show a lot of blood. It's certainly, you don't need a lot of imagination, and it's easier for the filmmaker to just deliver a lot of effects and a lot of blood and guts than, make the audience feel they're seeing something horrible, but you're really playing with their mind. So during that whole period of slasher movies, it would have been very easy to make at least half a dozen because we were making 15 movies a year during that stretch of time. And I really chose not to. And I think these films are more fantasy oriented than anything else. I also think that you can do a lot more with a big ugly monster because you're really suspending all belief at that point. You're having fun even if the monster does bad things to humans because it's a made-up monster. I think it's much more horrific to see, some wild-eyed crazy guy with a knife because that's, pretty real.
These films, the Robot Ninjas and the Skinned Alives of the world somehow, I don't know, perhaps, they seem very culty to me, so it seems not like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago where like maybe Dawn of the Dead was released, where it's getting a fairly wide audience. Gosh, I really don't know. That's the toughest question. I've been asked that before. I guess you have to be to a certain extent, but it could drive you crazy. Since when does a stab in the eye with a screwdriver be as harmful as, clawing somebody's face with sharp fingernails or taking a razor blade to their arm? Where do you draw the line? What's more harmful than the other? Really, really don't know. The ratings thing is so out of whack and crazy. I feel that you can really do anything if your film's unrated or rated X, because at least those are the laws, and you can do anything you want, And I don't really. I think that if people are gonna like go, I saw Robot Ninja, I'm gonna go out and kill some people, whatever. It would have been that, or it would have been something on Bruce Willis on Barbara Walters that might have made him flip. I really don't think, you know what I mean? Those people were disturbed to begin with, and maybe this could inspire them on a certain level, but I don't think it's the cause of anything, really.
I made a film, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which was one of those things where, in a moral sense or an artistic sense, why was the film made? And as a director, I'm almost ashamed to say I have no idea why it was made, other than the corporate bottom line. And that was my first experience and only experience to date with real corporate filmmaking. and it was a horrendous one in that respect. It was just awful. I think I think the one thing that filmmaker cannot do in this genre or in any genre is pander. In other words, you have a cigar smoking producer sitting back going, what does that kid in, 16-year-old kid want to see? We'll put in naked women and blood and no story. There's no backbone at all. And a lot of horror films today have that. And I think horror films today are in a very, personally speaking, I think they're in a very sad state. I mean, you have the Henrys and a few of the other few movies that really break out, but I think the genre is at one of its lower. To me anyway, there's very few breakthrough filmmakers like Romero, Cronenberg, and hopefully there will be some.
It's very true that there is a censorship problem in this end of the business, and of course we did run into some on Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. Even though the film's a comedy and the blood and gore are pretty humorous, I mean it seems to be pretty far out there. A lot of foreign territories just didn't see it to be as funny as we thought it was, and in fact in England, may I digress, where it was a big hit, they are not allowed to use the word chainsaw in the title. So, consequently, it's Hollywood Picture of a Chainsaw Hookers. Hookers are okay, and I can tell you that because I've been to England, and that's just about all that live there.
The MPAA today rates on tone. It's the overall feel, the mood of the movie. They penalize you for doing a very good job. And it has nothing to do with necessarily with amount of violence. It's just the tone, and because most horror films have a very black tone to them, which is good, and the MPAA penalizes you for that.
In 1980, Paramount released a picture called Ordinary People. It was the Best Picture of the Year, Academy Award, Best Picture of the Year. They also released a picture called Friday the 13th, which they acquired. It made double the money that Ordinary People made. I think that means something. You've got to look at those facts and kind of analyze what exactly you want to do in the business if you want to be a successful producer, director, distributor.
And I'm certainly no Roger Corman. Roger Corman is a genius. I'm just a working schmo. But in my own defense, and in the defense of my contemporaries, people don't understand that Roger will sit back and say, well, we made this film in 6 days for $100,000. Well, let me tell you something. Roger Corman's movies were talk fests for the most part that took place in 1 or 2 room sets with a complete studio facility. No major stars. They were in black and white, and they only ran 60 minutes. Now, we can't get away with that now. A $100,000 budget in the 50s probably equals about a $250,000 budget today, yet we're still making color movies that run 90 minutes that aren't talk fests, that have big name stars, and we're doing it for less than $100,000 a picture. So I don't think that what they're claiming in the 50s was such a major feat. We're beating it today with inflation and everything else. We're still making movies with Jan Michael Vincent and David Carradine and people like that coming in for less than the quickie films of the 50s, coming in at the same time or maybe even a little shorter, having more action, better special effects, in color with a longer running time. So I'd say we got the pants beat off of those guys that keep telling these stories about how they did this in 6 days for $80,000, But to give them their due, those films are probably the inspiration for almost all of us that have gone out and tried to do this. Those were the films that made us want to be filmmakers in the first place.
For the first time, really, in cinema history, the makeup artists became the above the title names. You had a lot of people going to these movies, and not just the fans really, that went because Tom Savini did the makeup, Rick Baker did the makeup, Rob Bottin or whatever. The makeup guys, and within the studios too, the makeup guys became as big a star as certainly as the director for the financing companies and for the cinema going public. So it was really I think now we're starting to swing back from that. But the makeup artist really became certainly definitely as big a star as anyone in the film, and which is interesting. I don't know if it's altogether good, but it was definitely interesting. And of course in the 80s a lot of makeup artists ended up becoming directors, which certainly in the 50s and 60s virtually unheard of.
On Class of 1999, we had a death scene with a young actor who's being killed by a teacher played by John P. Ryan. And the special effects as laid out in the script, or as I conceptualized them, had been pretty straightforward, and there were terrible problems getting them to work. So there was a case, again, where I sat down with a special effects guy, and he said, this is what we have to do, via necessity. And again, so I adjusted the screenplay, and it meant literally rewriting the entire sequence to accommodate this. But you run into that, particularly on horror movies, because you are dealing with special effects and camera tricks and things like that. So you have to be technically aware of what you're putting down on paper and the practicality of actually making it work on the stage when they're shooting it, particularly when they don't have much money.
I think naked women are the cheapest special effect. You don't have to wait forever for them to get ready, and chances of them blowing it are pretty tough.
When Jack picked up Equinox, I should add that he had to do a lot more work to our picture than he did to, like, Dark Star. I don't know that he did anything to Dark Star. I know he had John Landis shoot a couple extra sequences. But basically, the films that you see, I think Dark Star and Schlock were both pretty much the films that those people made. Whereas Equinox, they got the actors back, and they almost reshot the entire picture. Every time somebody is opening their mouth and talking, I would say 98% of the time, Jack, that was his new footage. And all they really wanted out of ours, I think, was the monster stuff and the effects.
I finished Vampire Nights, and I wanted to get a lot of money to get to do another film, like everybody does. Well, it took a long time, so I figured, well, I'm going to do another quickie, but a lot of fun. I think these films really do need a sense of humor. So I wrote it again. It was like 3 or 4 days, and I had a lot of fun. And actually, the original concept was Babysitter from Hell. I wanted to do a From Hell film because just the title is incredible. But Babysitter from Hell, you'd need children involved, because I was going to have them shoot the devil. But with children involved, you need a welfare worker. You only can use them 4 hours a day, i.e. money. Didn't have it. So I changed it to Girlfriend from Hell. And Girlfriend from Hell is a subject that you can tap into. It's like a vein of ideas, basically the battle of the sexes, which I don't think there's any other fantastic subject to cover other than battle of the sexes. It's great. They talk about man's, well, there's 3 subjects: man versus machine, man versus himself, man versus God. No, man versus women. It's an incredible subject. So I just let all of my frustrations and all of my sense of humor about relationships come out in this film, and that's how it came about.
I made a picture called Murder Weapon, and it was a real tough picture to make. It was a horror picture, and we shot it in about 7 days, and it was just too tough. I just knew I couldn't do that every 60 days. So what I did was I hired a kid by the name of J.R. Bookwalter, who I had met at a sound mixing session.
I kept hinting and throwing some scripts his way and kind of saying, well, look, are you interested in financing some more films? And I wasn't really getting any kind of feedback from him. So we were doing some insert shots for Murder Weapon one day, and I finally cornered him in a room away from everybody and said, look, how would you like to do a film?
Well, we had a meeting, and I had a title, Robot Ninja, that I thought was commercial. Science fiction, action, thriller, a little bit of comic book flair to it. And I said, why don't we make this the first one? And he said, sure. So he went out back to his hometown, Akron, Ohio.
Originally, the weird thing is I went in looking for a film for a friend of mine here and a friend of mine in New Jersey. So I wasn't even looking to do a film for myself. I was looking to produce 2 films for other people. Robot
Ninja ended up being a terrific little picture. So I asked him to make another one for me. And I made a picture called Skinned Alive, which was a Texas Chainsaw style, slash 'em up, violent horror picture. And JR is very good at that. Robot Ninja was very, very violent. And so few pictures were being made that had that kind of level of violence in them that I thought, I'll, take up the the slack.
It's pretty offensive, but I think the main thing was that I think he originally wrote it with having something like an Invisible Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 in mind, and it had that kind of quality about it, and those are filmed, that and Hills Have Eyes, those type of backwoods family type things are films that I like a lot, so I think there was a semblance between the two, and I just thought of, well, if we could make Skinned Alive another Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in the same type of vein, that's something that I wanted to do.
But while they were making those pictures in Ohio, I was back here in LA making one picture instead of 3. I made a picture called The Girl I Want, which will be released as Teen Bimbos in the United States.
Sam Raimi was very responsive to everything that I did, and generally, I really didn't have any conflicts with him. It was through probably 3/4 of the whole Dead Next Door, it was he and I on a one-on-one basis, which was great. Later on, he brought in his partner, and things got a little shaky, but that was his decision. But he was pretty responsive to what we did. But Dave Dakota is more responsive to more of a do-it-yourself type of thing. Sam believes in spending money to get good quality, whereas Dave is more for I'll give you the money, you do it yourself, and you're going to get what you want.
Being a director on Stepfather 2, because the film was originally made for video in 25 days, and so there was only a certain level of expectation that they were going for. It was a video film. It was basically a TV movie. So make it on schedule. Most producers, most production companies are more worried about being on schedule than being good. There was a time in the first week of that shoot. Terry O'Quinn and I were really. I mean, we worked well together. I really respect him as an actor. He's one of the best actors I've ever worked with. He and I we were trying different things. We're really getting some great stuff. And an executive came down from we were a little behind schedule, not horribly so. I mean, I'm no Michael Cimino, but what happened was the executive came down, pulled me aside, and said something to the effect of, Jeff, we'll take 60% of your quality. Just give us 60% of what you're giving us, but stay on schedule. And with the underlying theme being, if you don't do this, basically you're out of here.
I have been singularly very, very lucky so far in the involvement in the movies that I've done, because none of them has turned out to be a disaster, which is actually usually the norm. And I certainly can't say, well, I wrote this great screenplay, that's why the movies are watchable, certainly. But things have fallen into a place in a way that they certainly haven't for other writers. So fortunately, I don't have any great war stories yet.
I was sort of disappointed that no one was really interested in the picture except for Jack Harris, and then further disappointed to find out they were going to mess with it so much, because I thought as long as the picture is, the only thing that we really got out of it was the fact that we'd made it, and so if Jack was going to come in and mess with it, then it wasn't even really our picture anymore. And I don't consider his version our picture. It's his picture.
Every picture isn't a winner. You sit back, you look at Phantom Empire, and you go, boy, that didn't turn out so good. Maybe I'll just stick it in the closet and no one will ever see it. Somebody gives you money, or you have your own money, you owe it to these people to get that film out there, whether you like it or not, or if it turned out to be a gem or a dud. You've got to try to get those people their money back. And who's to say? Phantom Empire, which has gotten its share of bad reviews, has gotten some great reviews. Variety gave it a very good review. And of course, we all know Variety is the Bible of the industry. I put my hand on it every time I take the fifth.
I think the audience, they'll forgive, well, gee, the sound wasn't good, or the set fell down, or whatever it is, as long as it's consistently entertaining to them and they don't feel like squirming around. I wrote a film that it is incomprehensible. It is so awful. And it is the most boring movie you have ever seen in your entire life. I swear to you. Honestly, I'll even say it's called Night Screams. It is just, and I take responsibility for it, and it is awful. And the thing is, when I said, gee whiz, I thought that script was just wonderful, and I went back and I reread it, and it wasn't. It sucked.
You can't say that a good picture you did is an accident because you made a terrible picture. Roger Corman made House of Usher and Creature from the Haunted Sea in the same year. They don't look like they were made by the same filmmaker, but they were. Is House of Usher an oddity, a freak shot? I don't think so. There's Mask of the Red Death, The Raven, and all the other quality Poe pictures and other quality pictures that Roger has made. But at the same time that he would be shooting The Raven, he would be shooting The Terror. And of course, there's no comparing those two pictures. So it's not an accident that we make one picture better than another. One picture had 7 weeks to shoot. One picture had Lee Van Cleef and a cast of Oscar-nominated actors supporting them. One picture had millions of dollars, and the thing is that I'm just not going to get stuck up to the point where I'll say, oh, well, if you don't have $1 million, don't call me up. But the bottom line is that what we did is we got tired of doing the big budget pictures and getting the little paycheck. Somebody else was getting rich. It certainly wasn't me. Armed Response made it onto Variety's top grossing box office champs of all times list. I got $15,000 for directing that picture. That's kind of ridiculous, I would think, considering it took me 6 months to do it. It's a good picture, and I pat myself on the back that people do like it, but this isn't any way to make a living. So we broke off. We took our paychecks and made our own movies with the paycheck that we made off of that movie. So what do you expect? But you have to start somewhere, and we're working up, and our pictures are getting better all the time. I think Haunting Fear is a very good little picture, and it's comparable and has good performances, yet it costs less money than a Phantom Empire that had cost us more money. So I think, we have to grow and mature with our own craft, and I don't think money is the end-all and wear-all of our work, but I definitely believe that more time and more money equates to a better motion picture.
And the budget was incredible. It was $600,000. We shot it in 17 days. It originally started out to be another, I think I was going to do it for $100,000, which we had the money for. But people read the script, and they liked it a lot, so more people got involved, which was funny. I mean, I still wrote it to be done in one house. There's a couple extra locations. But when people read it, more people want to get involved. And not that $600,000 is a lot of money. To us, that's an incredible amount. But to them, they said, yeah, let's toss in some money. Before you know it, it's $600,000. And I had more responsibilities, more people to answer to.
In the films that we have done, they have mainly been the 1 to 2 week films, as opposed to the 4 to 6 week type of films. So it's a slightly different way of working. We don't really shoot that much coverage on films. A lot of the scenes are single shots. It's not quite doing the same thing that you'd be doing if you had an 8-week, a 10-week schedule like a major film, but it's still basically the same thing. And it's just that the schedules are a lot quicker. A 1 week or 2 week shoots translate usually into 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks of editing, something like that, which enables us to get films done economically. It also enables us to do a lot more films rather than just working on one film for 6 months or 9 months.
I've never figured that out. I still get up just as groggy every morning as I usually do and drag my ass to the set. I don't work any longer hours. I probably am quicker to take the first take on something, and I won't shoot as many angles on something as I might. I try to give the illusion that I've shot a lot of angles by shooting the first 2 lines or so as a 2-shot and the last 2 lines as a 2-shot, and then covering the middle of the scene in close-ups. That way people watching it seem to think that I shot the whole scene as a master first, and then did the other work in between there. Just try to keep moving, get actors who are really good on their dialogue.
Learn as much as possible to gain any kind of production experience.
I think part of being a good director is having a well-rounded, you're well-versed in every area and at least have some knowledge of what you're doing. And especially now, with makeup effects is a perfect example. I started, when I was making short films, I started doing makeup effects at the same time, and that was a little too messy for me. But I have a pretty good knowledge of everything that goes into makeup effects, and that's important now because there's just these films now are so makeup effects intensive. You just have so many effects in them that it's a good thing to have some background in what you're doing, and even some hands-on experience is even better.
My advice, definitely make films. I think Godard said something like, film will never be a true art form unless it's accessible to everyone. Now with video it is. It doesn't cost, you can literally do a film for nothing if you have to. It takes incredible tenacity though, and one thing is it's an incredibly hard business. I don't consider it a business, but I guess it is a business. It's incredibly hard, incredibly difficult, incredibly competitive. My advice is don't get involved unless you really, really love it, and it's not something that someone can teach you. It's not someone that no one can ascertain the love except yourself. And if you love it, there's nothing like it in the world. It's terrific. And in order to find out if you love it, you have to make films.
For The Alien Dead, I bought 4 rolls of 16mm Bolex load film for $40, $10 a roll, and took a silent Bolex out and made a monster mask myself and had this monster chase this girl down and kill her. And I showed this footage on my living room wall to a retired producer in Orlando, Florida, who saw some potential and agreed to put up half the money with me to make Alien Dead based on $40 worth of film that I had shot. So, you know, there's some things that you can do and get going. And now, of course, with video, which of course I'm not in favor of, but if you don't have anything else, you know, home video camera and a little ingenuity, you could make a feature. Don't expect to sell it or make any money off of it, but you might be able to convince somebody else to give you a little bit more money just by the tenacity that it takes to get through a project from beginning to end. You might be able to then convince someone. I just think the hardest thing for young filmmakers are those who call up and have nothing to show you and want you to give them money, you know, and I just think that you have to show somebody that you are able to go the distance and get the job done so that they're not afraid to give you the money. And don't come to me and ask me for $100,000 because you think that's a low budget, because I'll beat your schedule by 20 days and I'll make it for $50,000 and it'll be a better movie, so why would I give you $100,000 and you're an unproven commodity? So I think you have to prove yourself at whatever level you can. And I think you can do it, and you can do it very, very cheaply.
It's weird. They have video now. When I was a kid, I had Super 8, and actually video is kind of cool. It's a great learning experience. It's cheaper, and the results are instantaneous. But I just say keep make movies on video, and if they have enough equipment around or whatever, experiment. Write a story around stock footage or something like that of a movie that you know or whatever. And I mean, this is actually a particular thing I'm telling them to do, but experiment with editing. To me, I really did that a lot with my Super 8 films. I'd take those movies you buy at Kmart, War of the Worlds or whatever, and I'd write a story around them and shoot them in black and white so I can incorporate that footage in. Just because it was kind of a cool thing to do, and it always worked. Because, when you're doing home movies, it's like you never expect, the world to explode or something like that. And it gave me a great editing sense and timing for film and how things could cut and how I'd show them to the audience, because why didn't this work so well? And I cut it down and trim it down a bit, and I got to see. I don't know, it was a great hands-on experience. Unfortunately, with video, you don't really have that. But I just say, just keep working with the video cameras and just experimenting and trying different stuff. Make movies.
The big thing, I think, is to keep the cutting moving, keep everything interesting, keep it fast, and keep it gory by all means.
Yeah, remember, as a director, action comes first, then cut. That's about it. No, just get a camera. Just, I know people that haven't made a film yet, and I got out of film school with them, and their big thing is they have this one project, and they have to have millions of dollars to make a movie. Granted, yes, because they say, well, Dan, you do these low-budget films, but this story needs money into it to do it right. And I agree with them. Like, okay, fine, but what are you? I mean, is this your career, this one film? Why not, in the meantime, if you call yourself a filmmaker, get a camera and get some film and see what you're all about.
And my advice is jump in. I've heard so much advice, and I think so much of it is such bogus advice. You just have to start doing it. There's no other way to really learn. You can go to school for 10 years and understand technique and look at all the classics, but 5 days on a low-budget movie set will teach you more than all of that. I'm not to say that there's not a lot of value in learning about your craft and studying it in books, and if you love film, you're going to see the great films anyway, but you really need the experience, and it depends on what facet you're entering into. I mean, if you want to produce, direct, raise money, and really be the person responsible for getting a project off the ground, there's no way to learn that. You just have to go out and do it, mortgage your house and get rolling, That's the only thing to do.
Look, if you can't make it to Los Angeles where movies are being made, make commercials in your hometown, go to take any sort of art class or film class or anything, see movies, learn the craft as much as you can. But one thing I do have to caution you, if there's any hesitation in what you really want to do, if you think movies are sort of, hey, let's make a movie, it doesn't really work like that. You've really got to have a passion for it. You've got to absolutely love this business. You've got to live, breathe, digest this business. You've got to absolutely go for this business. Otherwise, you're doomed to failure. You've got to love it. You've got to love what you do, because when you're making less than minimum wage and you're breathing smoke you're working long hours, and you're getting screamed at, and you're very uncomfortable. You don't know what you're doing. There's got to be something that's going to take you and help you through it. And if you have a passion for and a love for the filmmaking process, then you'll survive. If you don't, you will die a miserable death.
Agents, as a writer, again, they are always on the phone every day. They know what projects are in trouble. They know if an assignment is coming up that, say, whoever it might be, Sam Arkoff wants to do finally, the remake of Invasion of the Saucermen he's been dreaming of. Well, now he's looking for a writer. Well, an agent will know that. And I think really for writers, they are absolutely vital in some ways that they aren't perhaps, say, as vital for directors even, because directors can have their work on display more, if you will, and they're than writers who are, every day 1,000 scripts show up at every single studio, and you need someone to champion you. Ultimately, if you want to get a picture made.
There was a situation years ago on what was pretty much my first feature, The Alien Dead, where we did not realize that the person in charge of getting us permission to shoot on this property had not gotten the permission. And we were filming a scene where people came down the creek in a boat looking for alligators. They were poachers. And about the time I was ready to do a run-through on it, the police showed up and started handcuffing all of us. And so I went ahead and called for the rehearsal, and I turned the camera on, and the whole thing was shot in a master. There was no sound because we couldn't do the sound or slate or anything, and they did actually film them coming down the river. I ADR'd it later rather badly as they were leading us all the way to the squad cars, where the camera was sitting there by itself running while the actors pretended to be rehearsing the scene.
So we needed zombies climbing on the White House fence, the White House in the background. So two people are driving the cars around the ellipse at the White House, and I jump out with the camera. We're shooting the scenes with like 5 zombies or something like that. And I guess we set off every alarm in the White House. It was kind of funny, actually. So security guards come running around from both sides. We jump back in the car, pull around, and they've already pulled over the DP with the van, or the zombie wagon, one of the two. So they pulled us over, and they thought we were terrorists, actually. They were going to go over the White House fence. I guess there have been some threats about that.
At this point, I've directed 3 episodes of the syndicated TV show Monsters, produced by Laurel Entertainment, and 3 half-hour episodes, all of which have featured a variety of special effects, including stop-motion animation. In fact, that's one of the ways, or one of the reasons I first came to do the first episode of that series was they needed some stop-motion animation, and so someone on the production who knew me made that connection, and I said, well, I can do that. I don't really want to, but do they have a director yet?
The joy and the fun that I have in making a film, in editing, in this business, is the gratification, the instant gratification of taking material, working with it, and when I'm done, in just a few short hours, it's something that can be perceived as a film. So that's what I like. There's a lot of things that you run into if you're working on the set as a director. You're concerned with the story, you're concerned with writers, you're concerned with your producer, you're concerned with actors. It's a very, very hard job, very hard job. I would not want to do it.
No, I didn't go to film school. I barely made it through high school. I wanted to because it seemed like the thing to do. But I realized that, look, I'm in Hollywood, movies are being made. I don't want to take 4 years out and learn the craft the only way to swim is to dive in, as far as I'm concerned. And sure, you can be hesitant, be very, very conservative about it and all of that kind of thing, but hell, it's when you're young and stupid like I was when I was 18, just dive into the industry. It's an industry that's tough to get into, but once you're in, people will like you. And they'll put you to work if they like you.
I do think a good thing will happen. I think there'll be fewer and fewer sequels and fewer quote-unquote franchise things. franchise series, which I think is one of for films in general, but specifically again for horror films. Every producer is like looking for the next Freddy Krueger or the next Jason or the next Michael Myers, and it's not just they lose sight of making. The bottom line is making the film you're making as good as it can be. And they lose sight of that and go, well, gee, we can only do certain things in the first film because that means in the second film and the third film we can do certain things, and that's not the way to make movies. It's not what certainly not the way to make horror films. And the trend that I think will be broken will be these franchise series will go down the tubes, and we'll get back to what's great about the genre: originality and imagination.
You know, people don't think that. People believe that the director is the end-all and wear-all of the picture. What they don't understand is that there is a power higher than the director, and that is the producer. And the producer can override you and will override you and do override you all the time. Yet in the reviews, the producer's never mentioned as a creative force in the film. The director catches the blame, and you can't stand in front of the theater with your hat in your hand and go, I didn't mean for it to end this way. This is not my ending. They made me do this. They shot this when I was working somewhere else. You just have to, as part of being director, if you want to be a director, you have to be ready to just stand there and take your lumps, shrug your shoulders, and hope that Shock Cinema calls you so you can make your point available to everybody.